Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about traits to look for in a practitioner, particularly when you're dealing with MCAS. And as you all probably know, there has been quite a shortage of MCAS practitioners, and particularly as the prevalence of mast cell activation has been growing for people. And oftentimes people end up kind of beating their heads against the wall with a practitioner who may not be the right fit. And so that's why we want to talk about what to look for in a practitioner and open a conversation about finding someone who may be able to help you. So while everyone's joining, I want to just say that this is for informational, educational purposes. We're not here to treat, diagnose, cure, prevent illness. So do work with your healthcare provider. And if you see affiliate links, that means that Mast 360 may make a small commission if you purchase through the link. And we do only recommend products that we use personally, we use in the practice, we've tested it and trialed out, and it never costs you anything more. So if you'd like to support us back for our free resources, that's a way you can do that. So we'll do some Q&As at the end. Just a reminder that to please keep your questions to the topic for the Facebook Live. Do please only submit your questions once. And if it's off topic or an in-depth personal health question, we're not being able to do those on here. So thank you for your understanding for that. And so for those of you on live with us, I'd love to know who's here and where you're from, if you want to share in the comments section. So we're going to talk about why it's important to find the right practitioner for you, traits to look for, and then information to share with your practitioner. And hopefully this will give you some good tidbits for working with your practitioner and getting some of the help that you need. So of course, it's important that we find a practitioner to avoid going the wrong direction for a long time. It's important that when we find the right practitioner that they can understand the role of things like histamines and food intolerances and help with that. And it's important to understand the role of sensitivities for those of you who are sensitive and understand those MCAS triggers and to understand kind of an order of operation in MCAS. And this is one of the bigger challenges that we see out there is especially jumping into harsher detoxes, things like ozone or metal detox before mast cells are stabilized. And that's a really big one to know. So because there are so many, because there is such a need for education out there for practitioners, a lot of times people like you are educating practitioners and helping them to understand how to work with MCAS. So what I've heard is that a lot of times practitioners who are open, and we're going to talk about how to find somebody who's willing to work with you like that, just what to look for, that as practitioners, people are learning as much from the people that come to see them as they are in studying. And so know that when you find somebody who's open-minded, if you can share some resources in a way that feels positive, that feels collaborative, then that can really help your practitioner to help you more. So these are some of the traits to look for. And the reason we're covering this is because I've worked with a number of people who just had poor experiences with practitioners. And I want you to know that what specifically to look for. So you have kind of a checklist of, is this the kind of practitioner who's going to be able to help me? And one of the top ones in MCAS is compassion. Does this person have compassion for you? Are they connected with you? Is there some kind of relational component? And that's so important because in the model of working with a practitioner, we have to be able to feel safe. And that also ties in with believing you and your symptoms. And so many people have been told, well, that's not important, or your lab work looks just fine. It's important that they believe you. And then take a comprehensive look at your case, not just your symptoms, but are they going to take a look at your health history, your timeline? Are they going to take a look at how things have unfolded and what you believe your triggers are and so on? And we'll talk about sharing those things with your practitioner. It's important that that practitioners take an individual approach to protocols in MCAS. So, in a lot of areas, it's possible to do the same protocol for everybody who comes in the door and help the majority of people. But as you all know, in MCAS, that there isn't a one size fits all. And that's why in our a lot of our materials, we talk about here's how to know if something's right for you, here's what to look for. This is what can work for people who are sensitive or hypersensitive, or if you're robust and you can take any kind of supplement. So, that individual approach is really important. And then you want a practitioner to work as a team member with you, solving challenges. And this means that they're going to take your thoughts into account and have conversations about them. Now, I a lot of times have people come to me and they say things like, well, I'm pretty sure that I'm really sensitive to all sulfur foods. And then um, I take that into account and talk about, okay, what are you noticing? And is it like bloating, or are you noticing that your brain just shuts down? And when does it happen? And what kinds of foods? And explore that so that we can look at it together. And sometimes it might be a sulfur sensitivity. Sometimes it may be a GI issue with foods like FODMAPs. Um, and not to discount what you're bringing to the table, but also being willing to be upfront with you and say, um, I see where you're coming from, and it may be that this is actually related to something else. So, that team problem solving approach is one of the things that's really critical. And then willing to learn more from you and to learn more in general, to discuss your thoughts. But this is also really big, willing to say, I don't know. And that's something that I found along the way, particularly working with practitioners for myself, is that if practitioners told me, well, this is definitely what's going to happen and this is how it's going to go, that I often ended up feeling disappointed because that's not what unfolded. But when somebody could say, I don't know, in a way that was with curiosity, I don't really know, but I'm sure that there's a solution. Then that demonstrates humility, and that's really important in practitioners as well. Also, willing to work with a team. Now, some people, as practitioners, really prefer to work as an individual because then they don't have the complications of other people's opinions or thoughts on your case. But we found with MCAS that complex cases may need a few practitioners. Now, typically you don't want though multiple lead practitioners. You may need a lead practitioner, you may need somebody who's a specialist in mold, you may need somebody who's a specialist in physical therapy or can help in EDS and things like that. And so don't go overboard with having too many lead practitioners. And sometimes I see people go from top name practitioner to top name practitioner looking for some kind of easy fix. But if you can find a practitioner who is willing to work with your team, that's really helpful. And then, of course, experience with and understanding mast cell histamine challenges. Not everybody can find a practitioner who has that, but if you can, then that's really key. If not, sometimes they're willing to take your thoughts and your opinions, what you're learning, what you're finding out, and work with you around that. And so if you have somebody who's willing to work with you, that's a great benefit in a practitioner. And of course, if you're sensitive, then experience working with those sensitivities can be very helpful. But not everybody is going to find a practitioner familiar with sensitivities. That's even harder than finding somebody who's familiar with MCAS. And so if you can find somebody who understands those sensitivities, wonderful, and they have these other traits. If you don't have somebody who's experienced working with sensitivities, then what you can do is let them know, hey, I found that I do better if I onboard one thing at a time and I go slowly and I build up over time. And you may have to guide that, and that's okay. And then it's helpful if somebody's knowledgeable about the most common triggers. And another key is to integrate a nervous system approach. This is, as you all know, and we talk about this so much, really critical with mast cell activation that we're looking at how the nervous system, how stress and all of that plays a role in mast cell activation. Now, this would be our gold standard list for a practitioner. But that's challenging. That's challenging to find somebody who has all of these pieces. So you may have to hold some of them. So you may need to educate yourself on sensitivities and onboarding, educate yourself on the nervous system approach, and weave those things together. Another really important trait, though, to look at, and this is one of the most important, if this is the only thing you take away, is that your practitioner doesn't make unrealistic promises. So beware of quick fixes and things that sound too good to be true. And I've seen a good bit of that out there where people are promised, hey, if you just do a 10 pass ozone, then you're going to feel fantastic on the other side. If you just do these metal detoxes, that may be really harsh, or glutathione IVs or things like that, then everything's going to clear up and be just fine. The truth is, nobody knows how it's going to unfold. We just can lay out an order of operations and to see what happens and then to respond to that and to see what happens and then to respond to that. So that's the way that people make their way through recovering with MCAS. But when there is, I've seen a lot of people fall for the quick fixes and then end up a lot more ill on the other side. So just beware of that, you guys. Just be careful about that. And um, if it sounds too good to be true, it may be. So let's look at what to share with your practitioner. It's important to share what's going to be helpful, and it takes some discernment. So when you're going to meet with practitioner, when I was going to meet with practitioners, and I still do, I prepare a synopsis for them, and I have my test results organized, and I try to make it easy for them. I try to put myself in their shoes and make it easy for them. I've had people, when I had a physical location, wheel in an entire crate of records and want me to look through that all in the amount of time that we had. And it's overwhelming as a practitioner, and it's a lot to go through and to make sense of, and it's not possible in the short amount of time. So getting your case organized will really help you. And one of the big things, of course, is to share your most concerning symptoms, but it might be too much to share every symptom. So what are the top ones? What are the big ones? If you would rate your symptoms on a scale of 1 being very mild and 5 being your really strong symptoms that are maybe debilitating, or a 4, maybe it's really affecting you, then I would share the 3, 4s, and 5s. But we don't want to get into, once a month my knee twitches, because it's just, again, too much to sort through. So think about that. And of course, share your medications and your supplements. And when you share your supplements, it's helpful, particularly in combo supplements, to have ingredients, or at least have, if you don't have the full ingredients, you need to have, with the inactive ingredients, you need to have the active ingredients in the dosage. So example, I'm taking a multivitamin and here's the label. You can organize that by printing out the labels if you go in with paper, or you can put it into a spreadsheet or something like that. But you want your practitioner to be able to easily look and see, okay, are you taking B12? Are you taking chromium? Are you taking zinc, and how much? And that way they don't add on more and more and more to what you're already taking. And it's hard to know if you just have a list of, well, I'm taking this adaptogen supplement, or adrenal supplement. Then we don't know if it has adaptogens. We don't know if it has minerals or vitamins in it or whatever. So do share those ingredients. And of course, known allergies and things that you know you're sensitive to. It's helpful to share a timeline, particularly of the major events that led up to the current health issues. So this can be your onset of symptoms, if there was a surgeries, if there were injuries, or even if you moved to a new location and that's where things kicked up. So When these timelines, sometimes I see people share not enough information. They only give maybe 4 or 5 points. And then there's a lot left out, like, oh, well, there was a surgery 10 years ago. There was a major mold exposure that wasn't in the timeline. But then sometimes people give a timeline that has 100 points, and that's a lot to try to process. So, again, think about how much a reasonable person could process and what are the most important events. This is how organizing your case can really help you, making sure you have enough detail, but not so much that it doesn't give your practitioner time to go through what you're sharing. And of course, the test results that are relevant, you want to share, but you don't have to share all the test results. You don't need to share, unless you had a history of some kind of major issue. Your practitioner may not want your CBC, your complete blood cell count, or your metabolic panel from 10 years ago. So you can ask how far back and which test results are most helpful. A lot of people who work in a functional approach like those functional tests, like organic acid tests and stool tests. But a lot of times, just going back maybe a year or two are the most helpful because at that point, things have changed so much they can be out of date. So know that your practitioner doesn't have to look at every test result that you've ever had. Another thing that's helpful is to share what you've tried and what that's worked and what hasn't worked. I find that really helpful when looking at cases to know that, gosh, this person felt great when they were doing infrared sauna twice a week, but then when they tried charcoal, they were crashing, or they tried a keto diet and they were crashing. So that can really help your practitioner also not repeat the same things that you've tried already. Now you have to keep it succinct again. And of course, keep your questions and be ready to take notes. Really important to take notes when you're meeting with a practitioner. And we talked about being organized and succinct, keeping in mind that time is limited. So, a lot of times, I know I felt this way myself for a period of time, and many people just feel desperate and we feel like we've got to get everything out of that appointment. But you'll have multiple appointments with your practitioner. So, let your practitioner look at your case and give you recommendations for what's the most important thing to cover first, and then second, and so on. The other thing that's so critical, and this can really make a big difference, is to have a positive and grateful approach when you work with your practitioner because these are really hard cases. And they can, practitioners are humans as well. And so we want to remember that these are challenging cases and to just go in being appreciative that the practitioner is working with you and willing to look at your case. The last thing I have here is to share educational resources. And a lot of practitioners have told us that they were helped by the blogs or the courses that their patients shared with them, and that helped them help more people. And so, don't be afraid to if your practitioner says, I don't know a lot about that, to ask and say, hey, can I share a resource with you? Would you be interested? Now, it's always a good idea to ask and get somebody's buy-in instead of just, push it on them and say, hey, I need you to read this. But to say, would you like me to share some resources with you? And an open-minded practitioner who wants to learn will say yes. So, how do you find someone? How do you find, and particularly right now, I'm looking at how do you find a medical practitioner? So, first, assess your needs. Are you needing medications? Are you needing prescriptions? Do you need a diagnosis? Or are you looking for help with root causes? And you may have a handful of practitioners on your team. You may have somebody who does your prescribing, and you may have somebody who has a more functional approach that helps with root causes. So think about particularly what it is that you need, and then who could help with that. If you're having, some people have some pretty significant challenges, like pretty significant GI challenges, then you may need more than a generalist. You may need a specialist. One of the ways that people find practitioners is asking around, because as I said at the beginning, we do know there's a shortage of mast cell practitioners. And currently, we don't have a list of recommended practitioners. However, we are working on training practitioners, and our courses have helped a lot of practitioners learn the courses we already have in place. So we would love to have a list at some point, and this is something that we're asking your help with. If you can let your practitioners know about our resources, then we can all work together to grow the amount of practitioners that are aware of mast cell activation and able to work with it. Some people find practitioners in Facebook groups that are specific to mast cell activation. So you can ask and say, hey, is there anybody in my area that is that you're really happy with, that's helping you and is taking new patients? You can consider allergy, immunology, functional medicine. So these are particularly the most common areas for people who are learning about MCAS. Now, you're also going to find in allergy and immunology some people that have not kept up with the latest research and are very specific about that mast cell activation is rare and so on. So you've got to do some research here. You've got to look at reviews. And then another thing you can do is search for MCAS medical provider in your area or surrounding areas. So remember, you don't have to stay within a specific city. If you have the ability to drive a couple hours, is there a city near you that you could also search around? The other thing is to make sure to check reviews. And you can even check people's websites. You can look for videos from them online to get a sense of them. Now, another thing that people have done is to have an open minded medical provider and use a team approach. And this team approach can be with an online consultant. So, this is something to consider as well. Sometimes everybody needs a medical practitioner, but then if you have somebody online that can help guide your case, then you can work in tandem, and that's an option as well. And then give that practitioner a try, but don't try to force it if it's not the right fit. It's okay if it's not the right fit to move on. I see people get stuck in, I'm seeing this practitioner, they're not listening to me, but I keep going back. I'm not getting anywhere, but I keep going back. We don't want to stay stuck. So to give yourself permission to try other people if you need to. So I'd love to ask how you found, if you have a practitioner, how you found a practitioner, and to share more about that. And while people are sharing, I'd like to pop those up so that you can see what people are sharing. One of the things I also wanted to let you all know, some people don't know that we have a consulting clinic. Now, we don't provide diagnostics, we don't prescribe, we don't do treatment plans, but we can provide recommendations, we can provide order of operations, and we can support your medical provider, and particularly if they're not as familiar with mast cell activation or open-minded. So we have a few openings. We used to have a 3-year wait list, and through streamlining some of our processes and being able to really train, we've got 2 practitioners who joined us. Alex Bingham, who works in functional medicine for over 35 years. He's a mold and Lyme specialist. Now he does consulting with us. He has a background as an MD. Again, he doesn't just diagnose and prescribe, but he's a very good practitioner and knows our methods really well. And then we have Kimberly Quirk, who's our functional mast cell coach, and she's just very, very good at the food sensitivities, the environmental mold, environmental chemicals, and those kind of lifestyle pieces. So if you would like to apply, you can apply here. You do need to have a medical practitioner who is local to you, who's overseeing your care. And then we're happy to collaborate, and we all work as a team approach on the cases. So we did want to let you all know about that. And we are working on pulling together practitioner training and getting that available for people who want to grow in terms of understanding about how to work with mast cell activation. So if you want to share resources with practitioners, then that's also a way that we can all work together to help improve our improve the access to people that can help with mast cell activation, and that's one of our key goals here. And let's see, we had some people who shared here. So Francie shared pediatric mast cell activation practitioners are rare, so we fly out of state to see ours. So some people are able to do that. Oh, thank you, Mary. Mary said she loves our program. I really appreciate you saying that. And then Rosemary shared that she found Jill Krista's list of mold literate doctors working out great. The remote doctor, that's wonderful. So our real goal is for people to have as much access as they can to be able to improve their health. And let's see, Belinda here, and it's even more challenging internationally. It's even more challenging outside the United States, but it is starting to grow, fortunately. And Belinda said she found somebody in Sweden, and but you have to have super high tryptase. Yes, and so that's one of the challenges that we're seeing in immunology is a requirement on the high tryptase, which not everybody has who's dealing with mast cell activation. So if you are interested in learning more about our clinic, there's information up there. We do in our consulting clinic, we do go through the applications. We don't want to bring anybody in if we can't help. And so we do really pay attention to what you share and whether we think we can help or not. If we don't think we can, we'll be upfront with you and let you know that so you don't have to waste your money. So thank you for joining me for this. And together, I know that we can continue to expand what is known about mast cell activation. We can help expand the education that's available. And then, if you're a practitioner or you want to join, you want to invite your practitioner to join our waiting list for practitioner training, then they can sign up at mastcell360.com/practitioner-training. So that's where that mailing list sign up is. All right, everyone, take very good care of yourself. Continue to um, educate yourself, continue to learn what you can, share resources, even sharing them in Facebook groups and things like that can help people. Because this is one of the things that's one of the conditions that's a super grassroots condition is mast cell activation. So the more that we can help each other, the more that we can share, then the better that the world's going to be. All right, take care, everyone, and I'll see you next week.